When we think about a business failing or an organization just hitting a wall, our minds, they go straight to the Hollywood version.
Oh, yeah, the dramatic stuff.
Exactly. You picture, like, the stock market crashing, people yelling on phones. Maybe a server room is literally on fire.
All right, the big public disaster, the event.
The event. But today, we're digging into some research that suggests we're looking in completely the wrong direction. The thing that actually kills productivity, that grinds growing companies to a halt. It rarely happens with a bang.
It happens quietly.
It's silent. It's boring. And worst of all, it's usually the result of people just trying to do a good job.
And that is the absolute scariest part. It's a silent killer. And honestly, it's one of the most fascinating dynamics in business psychology because it feels so productive while it's happening. Right up until the moment you realize you just can't move anymore.
So we are diving deep today into a white paper called The Hidden Cost of Complexity in Field Operations by the team at Dusk FSM. Now, I want to set the stage here. This is technically focused on field service.
Right.
We're talking people in high-vis vests, utility trucks, fixing power lines, that sort of thing.
High-stakes environments.
Very high stakes. But as I was reading this, and I think you'll agree, I got this sinking feeling because I realized this isn't just about trucks and wrenches.
No.
This is about every team I've ever been on. Software teams, marketing, even how we run this show.
Oh, absolutely. The context here is field service, which is probably the best laboratory for this because the friction is so, physical and obvious.
Sure.
But the mechanism, how complexity actually creeps in, that is universal. Whether you're managing technicians or a team of developers, the way that clutter enters the system is exactly the same.
So our mission for this deep dive is to unpack this silent killer. We need to figure out three things. First, this reasonable decision trap, how we accidentally build prisons out of good intentions.
Okay.
Second, the invisible tax of complexity that we are all paying. And finally, how do we actually design systems that absorb friction instead of creating it?
We're going to answer the question, why does working harder so often result in getting less done?
I am ready for that answer.
Yeah.
So let's start with the origin story. How does complexity even get in the building? Because I assume nobody sits in a conference room and says, hey, team, let's design a workflow that makes everyone want to quit.
No, and that's the crucial insight from the Dusk FSM paper. Complexity is almost never intentional. It isn't the result of bad choices, it's the result of reasonable ones.
Okay, walk me through that. How does a reasonable choice ruin everything?
Well, let's just paint a picture. Imagine you're running a field operation. It starts simple. Small team, maybe 5 technicians, 1 dispatcher. Everybody knows everybody. The process is pretty fluid.
The good old days.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then an exception happens. It always does. Let's say a technician is out on a job and they forget to check a specific safety valve before leaving the site.
Okay, a mistake happens. That's normal.
It is. But the manager, very reasonably, says, we can't let that happen again. That is a safety liability. So they go into the software and they add a mandatory checkbox to the closeout form.
Did you check the valve?
Did you check the valve? Makes total sense. You have a problem, you put in a fix.
Right.
But then a week later, the finance team comes along. They say, hey, we're having trouble tracking billable hours versus travel time. We're losing margin. So they ask to add 2 new fields where the tech has to log those times separately.
Again, hard to argue with that. You need to know your costs.
And then a big client calls. They need a photo of the serial number on any replaced part for their own compliance audit. So you add a step for that.
Okay, I see where this is going.
Individually, every single one of these decisions solves a real immediate problem. They're logical, defensible.
But it's the accumulation.
Precisely. It's like sediment in a pipe. The paper points out that these decisions are almost never taken away. They just stack up. And over time, your system stops reflecting how the work is normally done.
The 90% routine stuff.
Yes. And it starts reflecting every single exception that has ever occurred in the company's entire history.
Wow. That is such a powerful image. You're forcing every employee to walk through a museum of past mistakes every single day just to do their job.
That's a great way to put it. The paper describes this shift in execution. The system stops guiding the work and it starts becoming an obstacle course. It technically works, the boxes get checked,
Right.
but only because the humans involved are constantly compensating for the system's rigidity.
And that leads us right into this concept of the invisible tax. This is the part where I started looking at my own calendar and sweating a little bit. What does this tax actually look like day to day?
The tax is friction.
Yeah.
And you pay it on every single action you take. The white paper breaks it down by the stages of a job, and it's painfully relatable.
Okay, let's walk through it then. Start at the beginning, job creation.
So it starts with a dispatcher trying to assign a task. But because the system now have all these rigid, mandatory fields we talked about, they can't actually fit the reality of the job into the form.
Life is messy. The drop-down menu is clean.
That's it, exactly. So what do? They just bypass the fields. They put the real instructions in a manual note field. Ignore the drop-downs. Look here for what's actually wrong.
I've done that 1,000 times. See comments for context.
So you've already paid a tax, time lost, and now your data is structured incorrectly, so you can't report on it later. Then he gets to the field. The technician arrives, but the context is buried in that note.
So they're flying blind.
Right. So they have to stop what they're doing. They pull off their gloves, find a signal, and call the office. Hey, I'm at the site. What am I actually supposed to be doing?
And now the dispatcher has to stop their work to explain it.
There's the double tax. 2 people stopped working to solve a problem the system created.
Wow.
And it gets worse during the job. The paper highlights something I found really insightful. It's called the admin catch-up.
This one hit home for me. Explain what that is.
Okay, so think about the physical reality for a field tech. They're up a pole, they're in a muddy trench under a sink, it's raining, it's loud, they're wearing heavy gloves.
Right.
And the system wants them to tap through 5 screens to update a status.
They're not going to do that. It's physically impossible sometimes.
Of course not. It breaks their flow. It can even be dangerous. So they don't do it. They write details on their hand or on a scrap of paper, or they just tell themselves, I'll remember that for later.
And later is the enemy of accurate data.
Later is where data goes to die, because now it's the end of the day. That technician is sitting in their van. They're tired. They just want to go home. And now they have to mentally reconstruct the entire day to fill out these forms.
So they're backfilling the system from memory.
From memory. Timestamps are guessed. Details get glossed over. That check safety valve box gets ticked because they know they have to tick it to close the job, not because they're thinking about that moment.
Which means the data management is looking at the data they're basing those next reasonable decisions on is fundamentally flawed.
It's a mirage. And the scariest part, the paper argues, is the normalization of struggle. The team just accepts that this is how work gets done. It doesn't feel like a crisis. It just feels like, well, work.
It's the boiling frog. You just turn the heat up slowly and nobody notices.
Exactly. One extra click, one manual follow-up, it doesn't feel like a big deal. But if you do 50 jobs a day or 500 across a fleet, that friction becomes this massive drag. Everyone feels busier, but the actual output is stagnant.
It's like driving with the parking brake on. You're burning more fuel, the engine is roaring, but you're not actually getting anywhere faster.
And you're wearing out the car, which brings us to the human cost. But before that, I want to touch on why this gets so much worse as companies grow.
Right, because you'd think growth would help. Bigger company, better systems, more resources.
That's the dream. But the source argues that growth actually breaks things first, and it comes down to the loss of something they call tribal knowledge.
They use the example of Dave. I love this part.
Yes, the legendary Dave. Every small company has a Dave. When the team is small, you don't need perfect processes. You have Dave.
Shout out to all the Daves holding companies together.
Dave knows everything. He knows this specific client hates early calls. He knows that if you jiggle the handle on that machine, it starts working. The gaps in the process are just covered by conversation.
Hey, Dave, what do I do? Just hit the red button. Done.
But here's the problem. You can't clone Dave. When you scale from 5 technicians to 50, you just cannot rely on that informal coordination. You can't replicate one person's intuition across 50 new hires.
So the Dave system collapses.
It does. And here's the paradox, and this is really important for any leaders listening. When growth exposes these gaps, what's the first reaction?
Panic. They want to regain control.
So they add more structure, more rules, more approvals. They try to hard code Dave's brain into a checklist.
Which takes us right back to the reasonable decision trap.
Exactly. They're trying to fix ambiguity with rigidity. But field work, and honestly, most modern work, is inherently variable. You can't checklist your way through reality. So execution just gets heavier right when you need it to be faster.
The system is clogged.
The system is clogged. And growth removed the human buffers that used to absorb all that complexity.
So we have this clogged system. The parking brake is on. Where does the cost actually show up? Because the paper makes a great point that it isn't usually a failure in the sense that the job doesn't get done.
That's why it's so hidden. If the job didn't get done, everyone would notice immediately. No, the job gets done. The cost shows up in drag.
Right.
Execution just slows down. Jobs drift from Tuesday to Wednesday, schedules slide, momentum is lost in all the handoffs and confirmations.
It's the difference between gliding and wading through mud.
And that leads to administrative bloat.
Yeah.
This was a key point. Your office work expands faster than your field work. You start needing more dispatchers, but you're not hiring them to plan better. You're hiring them to babysit the data.
You're hiring people to chase other people.
Did you finish that? Are you there yet? Did you upload the photo? Your system should be telling you that. If a human has to ask another human for a status update, your system has failed.
That is a harsh metric, but it's probably true.
But the most critical cost, I think, is the cognitive load. Field work is hard enough, right? It's physically dangerous, technically demanding.
Yeah.
When you add a clunky workflow on top of that, you are forcing the technician to split their focus.
They have to focus on navigating the software instead of fixing the asset.
That's it. The system is asking them to interpret the process instead of just following it. And that leads to burnout. It really does. You're asking them to hold the process in their head because the tool isn't doing it for them.
And I assume the customer feels this eventually. You can't keep that friction internal forever.
Inevitably. They feel the inconsistency. Late updates, communication gaps. The paper makes a great point here. What looks like bad customer service is usually just a symptom of an upstream design failure.
Right. The dispatcher didn't call the customer because they were too busy chasing the technician for data the system should have captured automatically.
It's a chain reaction.
Yeah.
And because the pain is distributed, everyone feels a little bit of it. No single person feels responsible for fixing the whole thing.
The distributed pain trap.
Yeah.
No one person feels the whole weight, so nobody screams, "Stop."
Exactly.
Okay, we've painted a pretty grim picture. We are drowning in complexity. We are burning out our days. How do we get out? The paper pivots to redesigning for simplicity. But simplicity is one of those words that, well, everyone uses it. Nobody defines it.
It's a buzzword.
Yeah.
But they define it very specifically here. It starts with a mindset shift. You have to realize that simplicity is not a lack of capability. It's a deliberate design choice.
Simplicity is harder than complexity, isn't it?
Much harder. To make something simple, you have to understand it deeply. And the goal isn't to eliminate complexity. Fixing a transformer is complex. You can't wish that away.
Right.
The goal is to have the system absorb the complexity so that people don't have to.
Okay, system-absorbed complexity. That sounds great, but what does that actually mean when I'm building a workflow?
It means execution-first design. And there are two main components here that are really actionable. First, shifting from being status-driven to being action-driven.
Unpack that. That sounds a little technical.
Okay, think about a traditional system. A technician finishes a repair. Then they have to open their app, find a drop-down, and change the status from in progress to complete.
It's a manual reporting step. It's homework.
It's homework. And if they forget, the dispatcher thinks they're still working. In an action-driven system, the workflow moves forward based on what the person does, not what they say. So if the tech completes the final safety form,
The system knows the job is done.
the system knows the job is done and updates the status automatically.
Oh, I see. The worker doesn't report progress. The system infers it from their actions.
Exactly. It removes a decision. It removes a click. I don't have to tell the office I'm done. Doing the work told the office I'm done.
That's subtle, but that's huge. It closes the gap between the actual work and the data about the work.
And the second component is context. Forms and inspections shouldn't be things you have to go hunt for. They should attach to the job automatically. Data capture should happen as the work is done, not after.
So instead of do the job, then do the paperwork is embedded in the job.
Yes. If you have to take a photo to verify a repair, that photo is the paperwork. You don't take it and then upload it later. The act of verification is the act of data entry.
That makes so much sense. It feels like we're talking about automation here. But the paper has a warning about that, doesn't it?
It does, and it's a trap. If you just use automation to speed up a bad process, you just get bad results faster. Or worse, you use it to enforce rigid rules, which just adds stress.
Nobody wants a robot micromanager.
No. The goal of automation, according to this, should be to remove decisions. That's the metric. If a task is done, the system updates the office. No phone call needed. If a part is used, inventory updates. No form needed.
So automation is the silent partner. It's there to reduce the cognitive load.
It's the offensive line. It clears the path so the technician can just run the ball. They don't have to think, who needs to know about this? The system already knows.
There was one more point in this section that I thought was brilliant. Optimizing for the common path.
This is critical. Remember how we started with the reasonable decision trap? Adding rules for every exception.
Is sediment layer.
To fix that, you have to be ruthless.
Yeah.
You have to stop building your entire system around the 10% edge cases. Design for the 90% routine scenario. Make it that path slick, fast, and frictionless.
But the exceptions still happen.
And you handle them intentionally, maybe with a raise hand button or a specific exception workflow, but you don't make every single job carry the weight of the worst case scenario.
That's such a life lesson. Don't optimize your life for the disaster that happens once a year. Optimize for the Tuesday morning that happens every week.
It's the 80-20 rule for workflow design. If you make the common path easy, you free up enough brain power to handle the exceptions when they actually happen.
So if we pull this all together, we're moving from a world where humans are serving the system, feeding it data, correcting its mistakes, to a world where the system serves the human.
That is the core philosophy. The best systems are the ones that require the least amount of human intervention to keep the data accurate.
It sounds so obvious when you say it like that. Why is it so hard to just keep things simple?
Because simplicity requires discipline. It requires saying no. When finance wants that extra data field, you have to ask, is the value of this data worth the friction it creates for 500 people every single day?
And usually the answer is no.
Usually it's no, but it takes courage to say that. You have to constantly prune the process.
If you don't garden, weeds grow.
If you don't manage your processes, complexity grows. It's the default state of nature. Simplicity is an act of will. You have to fight for it.
That is a powerful place to land. So we've gone from the reasonable decision trap to the invisible tax of daily friction, all the way to execution first design.
It's quite the journey.
So for everyone listening, whether you're managing a fleet of trucks or just your own inbox, here is a thought to leave you with. Look at your workday tomorrow. Pay attention to the admin catch-up.
Watch for the moments you stop working just to report on the work.
And ask yourself, how many times today did I have to step out of my actual job to tell a system that I was doing my job? How many times did I serve the tool instead of the tool serving me?
And that answer tells you exactly how much complexity tax you're paying. And my guess is you're in a pretty high tax bracket.
Probably time for a tax cut.
Yeah.
Thanks for walking us through this deep dive. It's been eye-opening.
Always a pleasure to simplify things.
That's it for this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one. Stay simple out there.